One with the tiger. A man jumped into a tiger enclosure to be one with the beast, but it nearly ate him alive. Meet David Villalobos, who had a very weird obsession with tigers. Everyone noticed something about him was off, spiritual declarations, strange ideas about connection and destiny, but nobody intervened because they thought all of it would pass one day. But on September 21st, 2012, his delusion turned deadly on Wild Asia monorail ride at Bronx Zoo. David was on a train that glided peacefully over tiger enclosures. 400 pounds of predatory evolution separated from the tourists by a 17-foot drop, and a simple rule: humans stay up there, tigers stay below. Without any warning, David stood up and jumped into the cage. The fall caused broken bones as he hit the ground, but he survived the landing, and now he was inside the enclosure with a Siberian tiger named Bashuta. As he said, he just wanted to be one with the tiger, something wild and pure. Well, turns out Bashuta wasn't looking for any kind of unity, he was just looking for something to eat. The tiger swiftly grabbed him, its jaws clamping down on flesh as it began dragging him across the enclosure by his ankle. David managed to briefly touch the tiger's fur, maybe achieving the connection he'd imagined. Seconds later, zoo staff noticed what was going on and quickly responded with fire hoses, blasting water at Bashuta until David was released. Then they pulled him to safety, broken and mauled, but alive. Hospitalized with severe injuries, he was eventually charged with criminal trespassing and was sentenced to 1 year stay in a mental health facility. But delusion isn't limited to tigers. Sometimes it extends to gorillas, as one woman learned the hard way. Angry gorilla. 4 times a week, a woman would stand at the glass of the enclosure of a gorilla named Bakito and make eye contact with him, something zoo employees explicitly warned her not to do. For gorillas, prolonged eye contact is a declaration of dominance that demands a response. However, on May 18th, 2007, Bakito did something zookeepers thought was impossible. He climbed the stone walls of his enclosure and crossed the moat, even though gorillas can't swim. He overcame every barrier because he wanted out so bad. And then he went straight for her. He grabbed her in an instant and dragged her tens of meters across the zoo, attacking with a fury that left over 100 bites, a shattered collarbone, and fractured skull, which left many others questioning her survival. When rescuers finally pulled Bakito away, they couldn't believe their eyes. Against all odds, she was unconscious but still breathing. As soon as she regained consciousness in her hospital bed, she insisted that she felt a bond with him. She was still certain they had a special connection. However, after she recovered, she was placed in a mental facility where, after a few months, she was finally cured. Naked with the lions. May 22nd, 2016, Santiago, Chile. 20-year-old Franco Luis Ferrada Roman began his day by stripping naked and climbing into the lion enclosure. Witnesses said he appeared to be in some kind of religious ecstasy, shouting declarations about faith and divine protection. He'd left behind some notes, drawings of lions, and prophetic writings signed by none other than Jesus himself. One note read, "Angel of mine, protect me from the enemy. I have the power to do what I want. The devil is scared of me. I will lock him up back where he never should have come out of. Amen." However, the lions apparently didn't read the Bible. They attacked him immediately. Multiple lions mauled him as his screams echoed across the zoo. Tourists watched in horror as his head and chest pieces were being torn apart. Under the weight of hungry carnivores, his pelvis shattered, doing exactly what evolution designed them to do. Zookeepers tried using water hoses and tranquilizer darts, and one dart accidentally hit Franco in the neck. But the lions, they seemed unstoppable. With no other option, staff opened fire. 2 lions were shot and killed in front of horrified families on Christmas vacation. Franco was pulled out in critical condition, but somehow still breathing. Tiger on a manhunt. San Francisco Zoo. In 2006, a 350-pound Siberian tiger, Tatiana, had mauled a zookeeper during a routine feeding, which won't be its last victim. Fast forward to Christmas Day 2007, as the zoo was closing for the day, 3 teens got an extremely dumb idea that would put a huge risk on their life. Paul Dalival, his brother Kulbir, and their friend Carlos Souza Jr. were at the Tiger Grotto, drinking, smoking marijuana, acting rowdy, and doing something particularly stupid, standing on the railing, taunting none other but the same tiger that mauled a zookeeper the year before, the already infamous Tatiana. And after a few minutes, Tatiana finally had enough. With 18-feet-high fences, according to zoo claims, the enclosure was supposed to be secure, but in fact, it was less than 12.5 feet below federal safety guidelines. Those guidelines exist for a reason. Oh, and also, the moat was dry when it should have been filled with water. Every barrier was inadequate. Tatiana climbed and landed outside, ready to hunt those dumb teens down at 5:02 p.m. Carlos Souza Jr., 17 years old, was the first target. The tiger brutally mauled him, puncture wounds, skull, and spinal fractures. His friends tried to help, but Tatiana turned on them too, slashing Paul and Kulbir with her claws before they managed to stumble away, bleeding and screaming. They ran through the empty zoo and ended at Terrace Cafe. The doors were locked, and no one could help them. Kulbir managed to call 911 at 5:21 p.m. When police finally arrived, they found a scene from a nightmare. 2 men bleeding from severe wounds, and Tatiana sitting calmly, feasting on Carlos's corpse, guarding her prey. Officers tried to distract the tiger with their car lights, but she kept moving toward them, so they had no choice but to shoot her in the head, killing her on the spot. The zoo settled wrongful death lawsuits. The Dalival brothers received around $900,000. The enclosure was rebuilt with higher walls, glass barriers, electrified fencing, and signs warning visitors not to taunt the tigers. Idiot in love with a tiger. June 12th, 2022, Mexico, a private zoo. 23-year-old Jose de Jesus was feeding a Bengal tiger, his routine work, which he had done countless times before, but today, Jose's decision will cost him everything. Instead of using proper safety equipment, he decided to feed the tiger directly through the enclosure bars and stroke the tiger's neck. For a moment, the tiger accepts the touch. It's calm, seemingly docile, and then its instinct overrides everything. The tiger's jaws snap shut around Jose's right hand with 1,050 psi of bite force, enough pressure to crush bone like chalk, to pulverize muscle into paste. The tiger locks on and pulls, trying to drag Jose through the fence, making him scream. The bones in his hands are shattering, tendons tearing, and blood pouring onto the ground. Zoo staff rush in, desperate to free him from the tiger's grip, and eventually they succeed, but the damage is catastrophic. Jose arrived at the hospital with his right hand nearly severed, hanging by strips of tissue. Doctors deliver the news. The hand could not be saved. Amputation is the only option to prevent infection and systemic failure, but Jose refuses. He will not consent to amputation. And with that delay, the infection spreads quickly. 2 days after the attack, Jose suffers a massive heart attack in the hospital, dying at only 23 years old. The tiger was relocated to a licensed zoo from the private facility where it had been kept in mesh netting. Impressing girlfriend gone wrong. December 17th, 2024, Uzbekistan, Lion Park. F. Iriskolov, a 44-year-old longtime zookeeper, makes a decision to impress his girlfriend that will be recorded, uploaded, and preserved forever as a monument to catastrophically bad judgment. His plan? Enter the lion enclosure at dawn, film himself with the predators, and send her a video that proves how brave and connected to nature he is. He has clearly confused familiarity with immunity. Iriskolov unlocked the paddock, entered the enclosure with his phone recording, and approached 3 adult lions. At At first, they're calm. He stroked one's mane, called it Simba in a soft voice, then instructed all of them to be quiet and to stay calm. And for several minutes, it worked. Maybe Yariskalov started to believe he was the exception, the one who could walk among predators without consequences. But suddenly, one lion lunged. The camera kept recording as all 3 lions attacked together. Yariscalov's screams were captured in high fidelity as claws were tearing flesh and breaking bones. The phone kept filming as he died. In his last words, a whispered plea, "Be quiet." 4 hours later, coworkers arrived and found the enclosure gate open, and inside they discovered what was left of Yariskalov, partially eaten, torn apart by animals that never agreed to be filmed. Emergency teams tranquilized 2 of the lions, and the 3rd was deemed too aggressive and shot dead by a local hunter. The zoo director was charged with violating labor protection rules and sentenced to 3 years of restricted liberty. The video was uploaded on social media. Yariscalov's final moments are now public, a permanent record of how someone's confidence became fatal. His girlfriend presumably saw the video, but it's not known whether it impressed her. However, I'm sure that you will be impressed by these freak accidents with unexpected endings, where one man even managed to get a chainsaw stuck in his neck.